Good afternoon, everybody. It's Jeff Jenkins and Eric Clayman again. We're here for our weekly Facebook Live presentation. We do at 2 o'clock every Thursday. And today we want to talk about a couple different things. But the first one is we wanted to go over debts that people may have incurred during the pandemic. A lot of people have had a very difficult time paying rent, their mortgage, their utilities, or whatever. And we're going to offer what I hope is a little advice. Although, when you talk about prioritizing bills and paying bills, it's not magic. It's just, which one are you going to pay first? Which one are you going to pay second? But maybe the magic comes in when you run out of money before you get to the last few on the list. But anyway. So,
Jeff, let me just interject because we've been getting more what we call debt client calls or debt problem calls, people that seek our services. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of our newer lawyers, Rondi Schwartz, has been taking calls as well. And I just had a long meeting with Rondi because she was surprised at the number of people that call our office and we tell them, no, bankruptcy is not right for you, but still give them good advice. And that's what happens. People call us with debt problems. It doesn't mean you're going to be shoehorned into a bankruptcy. It means we're going to give you sound advice. And if bankruptcy is the right alternative, it is available to you. Jeff was talking about prioritizing your bills. It seems like you can look in a book and get that. What do you want, Jeff? You want shelter, food, transportation, and you live in New Jersey, auto insurance. And then you have to pay electric, gas, water, sewer, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then you have a birthday party to attend. And then you have a vacation to keep up with your next door neighbors. And, everybody's getting new show dogs these days.
Oh,
and you better get better food and go to the vet. And it doesn't stop, does it?
You need the good shampoo and vitamins for their fur and stuff like that.
So it really doesn't stop where one learns to spend. But Jeff, you said you almost used the expression, I think you were going towards it's common sense, but it's not common sense because it can be so stressful when you have $1,000 coming in and this month you owe $1,100.
Yeah.
So let's go under the assumption. Let's go back and forth. Let's go there under the assumption you do not have enough money to pay your bills. Mm-hmm. What should you pay and what will you just have to not pay this month?
Yeah, well, again, I think we think the best thing to do is to prioritize your expenses, even if you're on a limited budget. And like I initially said, you can't make it all the way down to the things that are at the bottom. So what's the most important thing to most people, I guess, unless you're Henry David Thoreau, who thought he could live in a coffin by Walden Pond, your house, your lodging, your apartment, that's what keeps you out of the elements, and you've got to pay for that. That's like the number one thing. So that's number one on the list, and unfortunately, usually that's a big ticket item based on the amount of money most people make. And number two, Eric?
I think it's going to be related to that, Jeff. I think even before food, I think you have to go with electric and heat. I think even though we're in a temporary situation where electric and heat aren't to be shut off, I think you have to go to utilities next. An argument can be made, and maybe you'll make it a number three because I'm giving you number three easily. But I think you need electric and heat, and then you go to the other utilities, Jeff, and you have a phone, cable, internet. We'll talk about them a little bit later.
Yeah.
Water. Not every tenant has to pay for water. Not every homeowner does too. We have a lot of people with wells and septic, but I guess water's right there with electric and gas.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good choice. That wasn't going to be my second choice, but I think it is probably the better second choice because if you don't have your utilities turned on, it's going to be awful cold in the wintertime and your refrigerator's not going to work and you won't be able to cook anything. And it just goes on and on. So utilities are certainly very important. And thank heavens right now we're in a situation where there's a moratorium on utility shutoffs. And so even if you're behind with your utilities, you might be able to work out a long-term payment plan with the provider. So let's say number three is food.
I think that has to be right.
Yeah.
And that's pretty obvious.
And I don't have to tell people who have a difficult time making it month to month what you need to do about food. I mean, you're not going to go out to eat every night, and going to fast food places is not good on a regular basis. You want to go to the grocery store and you want to buy the kinds of things that aren't that expensive, that are going to last a long time, not prepared food. Um, and if you do that, you might need to think about the things that you're buying. Should you buy all kinds of cereal for your children? Cereal is expensive. There's maybe something else the children could have for breakfast that would be um, as good for them or better for them and less expensive.
And as we just reviewed food and utilities, it is worth, if you're really in this kind of desperate situation, it is worth contacting your county and your county social services, as there's still, they call it SNAP now, but it's still food stamps and utility assistance is available. Jeff, after food, and I don't think we have to go too long into this, and then we'll talk about what happens if you can't do it. But I guess transportation or clothing you can skip for a long time, I feel like,
Yeah,
right?
you can. I mean, and
So transportation?
there's ways to go to. I mean, if you're really hurting, to go to a secondhand store and get clothes. Go to the secondhand store in Haddonfield, and you'll find very nice clothes. I had a client in the not too distant past who told me that the woman that he'd married is very frugal and insists on going to the secondhand store for clothes. And he says he's getting clothes that nobody ever wore before,
Right.
and nice clothes. So
Every season you need new clothes, yes.
that's right. So that doesn't necessarily have to be a big expense.
So
But I think the transportation is probably the expense. And for most people, that means a car. Although we have public transportation in New Jersey, a lot of people take buses. And if you hardly ever get out of the house, with the advent of Uber and Lyft, rides places are less expensive. And I'm not putting in a plug for them. It's just that it doesn't cost that much. And so, if the choice is pay the Uber guy $5 once a month to go to the grocery store, or have a car that you have to pay car insurance on and car payments maybe, and
maintenance
and maintenance and gas.
Oh, and our gas is getting high. You notice that?
Gets worse and worse, doesn't it?
It really does make Uber and Lyft or whatever ride sharing services or a taxi seem more expensive. And speaking about buying a car, never buy the car at the first dealership you stop by. Never. You can always come back tomorrow. That same car is going to be there. I promise you. Get a price, get it in writing, and leave. No matter what they tell you, leave. You'll be surprised at the better deal you get the next day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when you go to get a car, getting a small car and leasing it is sometimes not a bad answer, because it's new, you're not going to have maintenance problems, and you're going to have a warranty on it, and you're not going to have to put much down at all if it's leased necessarily, and the monthly payments are going to be less than if you purchase the car. So that's always a thought. Or buying a car that is used, for lack of a better word, and all dealerships have those. And because cars, like other things, depreciate rapidly once they're purchased. A boat would be another thing that would depreciate.
That's
rapidly.
not on our list of priorities, I don't think.
Well, unless you're a fisherman or something.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. But so you want to be reasonable about your car and really think about how much you're going to spend on it. You don't want to go overboard and buy something you don't need, size-wise or luxury-wise or whatever.
So, Jeff, those are the basics.
Mm-hmm.
Then we talk about child care for those who need it. Of course, that's a super priority to keep your job,
right,
and children's expenses generally. And then, but before we get to savings, which we're not going to be speaking about today. So it's the end of the month, Jeff, and the person's listened to this Facebook page, and they still owe for medical bills, and they're getting hounded and hounded. and credit cards because they put part of the medical bills on the credit cards, and they were out of work and they had to buy food and they put food on the credit cards. Credit cards and medical bills, and they're getting collection notices and phone calls from professional collectors, and the money's just not there.
Right.
That's where we come in.
Yeah, it is. And I throw loans into that category too, unsecured loans. And what Eric and I are moving toward right now is more of a bankruptcy perspective. Like if things weren't going well, and I mean, first of all, bankruptcy or no bankruptcy, if you don't want to pay some unsecured loan before you pay your house payment, or
That's what I skipped
or
over.
for
I'm
food,
sorry. Yes,
or
you're
your
right.
car payment. You've got to pay those things. And so the last things you pay would be the ones that we just mentioned. We call them unsecured debts, medical bills, credit cards, unsecured loans. And if you end up having a great deal of difficulty with these things, you just can't pay them at all. They're calling you, they're sending, now you start to get notices from attorneys that they're going to file a lawsuit against you. That's when you need to go see an attorney. Like we've said over and over again, when you get something from the attorney that he filed with a court, you got to go see a lawyer. I mean, it really makes the most sense to do. And if we, if you came in to see us and that's the way you paid your bills, and you have not been able to pay the medical bills, the loans,
Credit
cards lately, we can get rid of all that stuff for you generally. I mean, the thing that we don't want to see is we don't want to see that you took out a second mortgage on your house to pay your $20,000 in credit cards, because then we can't get rid of it necessarily. But if you had not done that, we probably could.
Right, Jeff, and that's you continued thematically with what we were talking about. It's after you prioritize, if you still can't make it work, the government has laws in place called the Bankruptcy Code, and we can help you. And Jeff's point, the best point that I guess almost every episode we talk about, if a creditor, the people you owe money, your mortgage company, your landlord, your car finance company, or any of those other debts that Jeff just mentioned, the unsecured debts, if they hire a lawyer to collect something from you, you darn well better hire a lawyer. And what's interesting is that some of the lawyers that you hire will be better than their lawyers, even if it's a giant mortgage company or a giant car finance company, because we've been doing it longer and better. And we are uniquely qualified just to handle your type situation.
Yeah.
Jeff, I skipped over one part that I wanted to talk about. Maybe you can talk about, but I'll bring it up as a question. How about if the person has, let's talk about taxes in general, real estate tax problems, IRS problems, New Jersey tax problems.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, I don't mean to be redundant using the word problem a lot, is you can't make payment arrangements with your local municipality if you're behind with real estate taxes.
No.
These other debts that we talked about, typically, if you handle a collector and you've come up with some money, you can do a payment plan. And God bless you, do a payment plan. Don't file bankruptcy. But if you haven't paid your home real estate taxes, that's just not available to you, is it?
No, the municipalities aren't going to accept a payment plan. And Eric and I have talked again and again about the importance of paying your property taxes, because if you don't, somebody else is going to pay them for you. Right. And they're going to get a tax sale certificate. And if you don't redeem it, in other words, pay it off in 2 years, they'll start a tax foreclosure, which takes 2 months. And they'll go to court one day and walk out of there with a deed to your house.
It's horrible.
It's really scary stuff. But the IRS and the state are pretty good about working out payment plans with people. They really are.
Right.
We've had many, many clients who've come in to see us who had tax problems with the IRS or the state, and they might have had a payment plan going, or they've been talking to the IRS or New Jersey about having a payment plan, and they're very good with you. Even they'll take what you can afford, generally.
Certainly the IRS. I think New Jersey's a little tougher. That's been my recent experience, but I think Jeff's generally right. The problem is, of course, if you owe the IRS, you owe New Jersey, and then you have other debts anyway, then you're working on 12 payment plans. Each one's only $100 a month, but pretty soon they add up to real money. And that's
Right.
that's just to elaborate on what Jeff said, we see many people who see us with good payment plans with the IRS, and they're not being hassled and they're making the payments. But once they see us and we look at their entire portfolio of debts, it's pretty obvious they need to file bankruptcy. And the act of a bankruptcy is not a default in your deal with the IRS. It just stops the deal. IRS isn't upset. The IRS is following the law. So the IRS had in place a payment plan, and now they stop it because of the bankruptcy, which stops all collection actions, and they understand that. So I've had many clients say, well, I have a good deal with the IRS. I don't want to stop it. I'll say, or Jeff will say, well, we'll give you even a better deal. We're going to discharge the whole debt if it's 2 or 3 things have to be in place. But basically, if it's an old tax and the tax return has been in the IRS possession for more than 2 years, we can sometimes treat it just like a credit card or personal loan. It just goes away.
That's right. That's right. We can. And if you come into us and you do have tax liabilities to the IRS and the state, we go through them thoroughly to see exactly what they are, when your return was due, when the return was filed, and was a lien filed against you. We check it out completely. And there are many instances with our clients where we can get rid of money that they owe on their taxes.
Right. And I started this conversation about real estate taxes. Please understand you do have to pay them back, and often the interest is high. But as Jeff pointed out, less than 3 years for sure, 2 years and a couple months, you can lose your home for not paying real estate taxes in New Jersey. And if you get anything from what's called a tax sale certificate purchaser, someone who redeemed a tax, whatever term they use, if you know you haven't been paying your quarterly real estate taxes and you get a notice from a creditor, call a lawyer right away. You need help to save your home.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important. And Eric, I'll just reinforce what he was saying about the IRS and the state. When we file a bankruptcy, I don't care what you had going on with the IRS and the state, even if you wanted to keep it, you had some sweetheart deal with the IRS, you smooth talked whoever you talked to at the IRS, and you got a deal to pay $25 a month and you owe $10,000. As soon as we file the bankruptcy, that stops. The IRS and the state are going to go according to the bankruptcy laws and how they treat you, absolutely, positively, and always. No more payment plans, no more accord and compromises or anything like that.
Yeah, it is funny how people will say, no, I have a good deal, but we're getting it. So to look back on this, so what other types of debts? There's other types of debts that people personally feel responsible for, and these are delicate debts. The bankruptcy or non-bankers can be handled, Jeff. And I'm talking about the situation where you have a mother, father, sister, brother who co-signed on a car loan or co-signed on something like that, and you just weren't able to make the payments.
Right. We always are careful to talk about that and ask questions about that with our clients. And like Eric is fond of saying, a co-signer is liable on the loan. It's not like one person gets the loan and somebody else co-signs and there's some special treatment afforded the co-signer. The co-signer, it's joint and several liability. That means each person that signed is responsible for the entire debt. And there are ways that we can take care of that if we end up doing a bankruptcy. For example, if we did a Chapter 13, we can offer to pay that particular debt in full, even though we pay all other unsecured creditors nothing, because the bankruptcy code allows us to have create a special class of creditors, a co-signer class, and treat them differently from the other unsecured creditors. And if we do that, then the co-signer is protected. The thing's going to get paid in full. According to the bankruptcy laws, they're afforded the same protection you are. The creditor can't harass you, nor can they harass the co-signer.
Right. That's very comforting for a lot of people, Jeff. We filed some bankruptcies where it's remarkable that one debt can be paid and the others can be discharged without payment. But that's the way the bankruptcy code is written, and it's accepted like that. The other thing that we've seen in New Jersey a lot, Jeff, are people who, when they get stopped for traffic fines, serious offenses for the most part, but not always, multiple offenses, they owe something called a surcharge. And in
Mhm.
fact, their driver's license gets suspended.
Could
And
get
then
suspended.
could get suspended for not paying the surcharge.
Mhm.
We can help people who don't pay driving surcharges in New
Mhm.
Jersey.
Absolutely. A surcharge is a dischargeable debt in New Jersey. And so if somebody comes in to see us and they've got surcharges, and as a result of the amount of surcharges, the dollar value that they're up to, their license has been revoked, we can get their license back for them right away. The DMV is pretty good about that. They're responsive, very responsive. And if we're getting rid of all your other debts, we can get rid of the surcharges too. The only thing we have to watch out for, without going on and on, is if you own a home and have they sued you and gotten a judgment against you. If they have, it's a lien against the property, makes things slightly different. But
A little
yeah,
dicey. But we'll talk to you about that too. But it does become a little dicey and spicy if you own a home with equity,
yeah,
especially. But that's really all debt. We can talk about that. So the conclusion, Jeff, is that take your time, pay what's most important. If at the end of the day you can't afford something, try to work out a deal. There are some creditors that you just can't work out a deal.
right.
And then if it gets really bad, and by bad, I mean that anxious feeling in your tummy that you know that things aren't right, then call a professional for help.
Absolutely. And we were talking about this last week, I believe. You can't getting peace of mind from talking to a bankruptcy attorney, because they can tell you it's not that bad, the world's not coming to an end, and chart a plan out. What are you going to do? This is what we're going to pay. This is what we're not going to pay. We do need to do a bankruptcy. You can go home and breathe a sigh of relief, because you don't have this stuff hanging over your head like the sword of Damocles.
Ooh, very good. And, and it's the truth. We've had many, many clients who call, or they say, they walk in crying and they walk out smiling.
Mhm.
I don't want you crying when you come in here, but if you have to. And Jeff, next week, I really think we should talk about, I think I had planned on talking about it today, how we are meeting clients.
Yeah,
Maybe we can talk about that next week.
Oh, well, let's talk about it next week.
Okay, so we can talk about we are meeting clients in person,
Right.
by phone, by Zoom, by Duo, or in the parking lot, whatever you want.
All
We're
kinds
gonna
of
help.
different ways. We've had to vary our procedures. It used to be we always saw all our clients in person, but with COVID-19 and the restrictions placed on us, we couldn't necessarily do that. We have 5 offices in New Jersey, and for us to go to all of them and see people in person is difficult with the virus running around rampant. Uh, so we offer people, they can, in the safety and comfort of their own home, can talk to us for free about their problems. And if they decide to do a bankruptcy, we can do everything we need to do over the phone. And if we can do a Zoom thing, so you can, well, you see what we look like, but we can see each other, and that helps sometimes.
Good.
But we can talk about that more next time.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So I think we're good for today. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching us. We appreciate it. And so until next week, stay safe and God bless.